So this is the brand new Gigabyte Aero 16. It's the OLED model utilizing NVIDIA's new RTX 40 series. I reviewed the 2022 model last year, and my biggest complaints were the lack of ports. They just threw a dongle in the box, which was weird for a laptop this size, and there's a few other little things that just weren't great, you know? But this year they're back, they listened, they made a few changes, and overall this is a much better product than it was before. Design-wise, it looks very similar to last year. It weighs about 4.63 pounds. This is the Twilight Silver model, and it's using an aluminum alloy. Because it's an alloy, when you touch it and you press on it, even though technically it's still a metal, it feels kind of plasticky, but they're obviously using this in order to reduce the price and also keep the laptop as light as possible. The other little change is that the lip is no longer there. They used to have a lip here where they house the camera, but the camera is now on the top bezel inside of the laptop like most other products on the market. But the biggest change is the port lineup. With the previous version, there just wasn't a lot of ports, but this new one has enough I/O for everything. For example, you have a Type-C 3.2 Gen 2 port on the left-hand side, you have a micro SD card slot, combo audio jack, and then on the right-hand side, you have two Thunderbolt 4 ports, but this year they added ports to the back. So your DC in is away from you, which is always a good thing. Then you have a USB-A 3.2 Gen 2 port, and then an HDMI 2.1 port. Just like the previous version, it's very easy to open up with one hand. There's a little bit of wobble on the display, not as bad as the Aero 16 or 15 rather from 2 years ago, but it's significantly improved. I would have loved a slightly tighter hinge, but it's not bad enough that I think most people are gonna be annoyed. The biggest update is this keyboard. It just feels so good to type on. Like, these switches are 1.5 to 1.7 millimeters, but there's just enough force that it feels really good to type on. There's no cramped numpad squished on here like they had 2 years ago. The power button is now flush with the rest of the keys instead of being separated at the top. The keys themselves are now white instead of black like they had on the previous version, and same with the actual touchpad. The touchpad is glass and it feels good to use when you're moving around your finger, but the actual click is very, very audible and it feels a bit cheap. Just note that these vents are not speaker grills, they're just vents to help with airflow. The speakers are actually on the bottom of the laptop. There's two 2-watt speakers and they don't sound that great. They're very flat, they're very tinny. You're gonna wanna use headphones with this laptop. Now, just like the previous version, the star of the show is the display. It's a gorgeous OLED display, you know, like it has deep blacks, the colors pop, the contrast ratios are through the roof, the color gamut is impeccable. Like, if you're a designer, you're gonna absolutely love this display. If you're watching content on this, everything looks fantastic. It's 16 by 10, so you get that vertical space. The bezels are nice and thin. This webcam is 1080p, and you have Windows Hello facial recognition to log you in quickly. My only complaint about this display is at 60 Hertz. With most creator laptops coming out this year getting high refresh rates, it's kind of a bummer they stuck with 60. Even 90 Hertz would have been appreciated, because I feel like people who are buying this might like to create, but also game on the side. Now, the reflection on the display is not too bad. I've seen glass panels that are significantly worse, but if you are sensitive to PWM flicker, you're gonna wanna keep the brightness above 50%, because as soon as you drop below 50, the flicker kicks in, and if you're sensitive to that, it might bother you. But let's face it, probably most of you here are to talk about performance. And this is using the brand new i9-13900H from Intel, and it's paired with an RTX 4070. Now, if most of the stuff you're doing is CPU related, this new 13900H is not much of an upgrade compared to the 12900HK that was in the previous version of this laptop. So if you're a developer, you have nothing to worry about. I wouldn't get jealous. It really comes down to the GPU pairing. Like, if you're a creator, this new RTX 4070 is faster in some instances than the previous 3080 Ti that I tested out in the previous version. It's not like drastically better, but it's definitely faster in some situations depending on the application that you're using. So if you're coming from like a Aero 16 or 15 from a few years ago, this is gonna be a very nice upgrade. The one area where I saw the biggest performance improvement was definitely gaming. The new RTX 4070 definitely performs faster than the RTX 3080 Ti that was in the previous model from last year. So if you're a content creator or a developer who works a lot but also likes to game on the side, then you're gonna appreciate the performance improvements from the 40 series alone. Again, most of these improvements are from the GPU, not so much from the CPU. The one area that is drastically better though is heat management. Like this thing runs very cool. Like it never gets super hot. Don't get me wrong, it does have loud fans. Like turbo mode on this thing is over 60 decibels. Like that's nuts. Like 60 decibels on a laptop like this is crazy. Thankfully, it's a separate mode that you have to activate yourself, which is turbo mode. If you use like the normal creator mode, you're looking at in the 50s. If you're looking at eco mode, it's obviously going to stay below 40. But if you ever turn on turbo, get ready to put on your active noise cancellation because those fans can surely ramp up. Now there is a mux switch, but you do have to restart the computer if you want to utilize it. And Gigabyte does have their own personal software that lets you tweak things if you want to improve the overall user experience. Now the internals are pretty easy to get into, and you have a 88 watt-hour battery. I got about 7 hours and 15 minutes of just like general productivity. I feel like if you're doing true hardcore work, that battery life may be around 3 to 4 hours, depending on how intense it is. But you do have a lot of copper, about 4 heat pipes at the top. It's not a vapor chamber. I don't think they're using liquid metal, but I don't have any complaints about the cooling overall. One drive is populated. You get really good read and write speeds, but if you want to upgrade to a second one, there's a slot right here on the bottom right. Swappable Wi-Fi 6E card, and you have 2 slots for RAM. This is DDR5 4800 megahertz, and you can upgrade it to a total of 64. So overall, Gigabyte has improved the laptop compared to last year's model. It's just a more pleasing product to use. Obviously, it's not perfect. I would have loved to have a high refresh display. I would have loved a slightly better clicky touchpad. And I would have loved to have a bigger battery because I think for most people who are using this off the charger, who are trying to get like real work done, might find the battery life not to be the greatest, but everywhere else, they've improved it. And I think it just really comes down to pricing. If they can undercut the competition, then this might be a very popular creator laptop for a lot of people to consider. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comment section down below. There'll be a link in the description in case you want to pick it up. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.